You would. Welcome everyone to a Mere Mortals Meandering session. It's where your two favourite Mere Mortals, Kyron on this side of the microphone,
one on the other side,
get together in the park for a deep conversation with a light-hearted touch, focusing on the light-hearted for Meanderings.
Correct.
Random topics from the week that was that have come up into our mind, something fun, something interesting. I'm going to kick off with my first one, which is I had a spicy chat. Whew.
Spicy, okay.
My tongue is burning.
Whew.
Spicy chat. So what happened this week was normally my brother, my dad, and sometimes my mum, depends if she's got her like chorus singing and whatnot. We all go out together. We grab like a dinner, actually not even necessarily a dinner. We just leave the house and go to another location.
Sure.
So usually this is the casino just across the river here. And, we'll go there, won't even gamble, just like have a couple of drinks, get out of the house and sort of, there's something about moving yourself to another location with other people, which means you can have different interactions.
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
What's really fun with this is with my dad and my brother, we can have some spicy chats sometimes. Most of the time, they're pretty casual, or it's almost. I always jokingly said, like, man, I kind of wish I had a microphone, could plump it down in the middle of the table
just to
and
be able
just
to hear
record.
some stuff.
Because
Yeah.
it was, there'd be like hypotheticals. My brother's, I would say, in this real fitness kick at the moment, so he's asking a lot of questions with regards to maximizing genetics. What would you do? Would it be good if we forced everyone to go to the gym? That sort of thing. I said no to that. I was mostly on the no side. My dad was, very strongly no. My brother was like, let's get all the fat asses in the gym.
I'd align to your brother. I think there should be some mandatory.
Yeah, I believe you mentioned this before.
Mandatory pushing towards exercise. Or at least like making it just more accessible or more freely available.
Yeah. In any case, that was one of the topics, but we actually had a quite spicy one, which was with regards to, in particular, because my dad's now at he's a little bit older than your parents. I think he's 65. Yep, 65. And he's really starting to get set in his ways. He's always been independent, and you can maybe see that streak in me a little bit, although I would say he's probably more confrontational in his independence than I am. I'm kind of like,
he sticks to his guns and what he thinks.
Yeah, for sure. And he's not afraid of calling out shit that he thinks is wrong. And that was the actual bane of this argument. So,
all right.
just to give some context, my brother had basically announced to everyone a week or so ago, I'm going to start eating 5 fruits, eating 5 fruits and veg, the 5 servings per day that's been recommended by whatever. Now, his reasoning for this was because he wanted his skin to glow up.
His skin to glow up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my dad's initial reaction to that was, like, that's dumb, essentially. Like, it wasn't positive feedback. It was negative feedback. And it was negative feedback related to your skin's not going to glow up. Like, there's
as in the reasoning of, if you follow the 5 and 2, that's not going to work. That's not going to do that.
It's not going to do what you think it's going to do.
Gotcha.
And now my brother was sort of arguing against this initial reaction, and I've noticed this in myself, which is I tend to have like a kind of cynical reaction to a lot of things. Your friend had this exciting story about diamonds and crazy shit, and I'm like, I noticed in myself, my initial reaction is, that's a scam. He's going to get his organs taken.
Yeah, Simon's going to go wildly wrong.
It's not like, oh, whoa, this is awesome, this is amazing. And so the sort of conversation became spicy in the sense that it was like, Dad, do you realize you have this very cynical, negative outlook? And my brother was almost saying, like, for the greater good, it would be better to have a positive outlook, because that sort of negative reaction, even though it's maybe more grounded in science and stuff, it's more likely to have a bad reaction in the world, because he would then maybe not eat 5 fruits and vegetables, because now he actually, that wasn't his sole and only reason. He wants to get healthy, and he, like I mentioned, he's been on this gym tip. Yes. And when pressed to the point, I'm sure he would say, look, I don't have sufficient data indicating skin is going to blow up. If there's 100 people in a room, I can't tell whose skin is glowing up, or things like that. But it got me thinking about two things. I'll ask a question first, and then I'll get to the other point. So, are there anything where you think that you will like be willing to tell a lie for the greater good? You know, for the I'm willing to let this slide because I can see how maybe the impact it will have on a person is better for their life overall, even if it's kind of like, I don't actually think that's true, sort of thing. So, any instances call to mind?
I think straight away the probably the simplest, and I don't know how to put it in numbers, but I would say some sort of lie along the lines of spending money on a gym membership is the best money you're going to spend. Like that's what I was going to be like. One of the best ways you could spend your money. Now, that's like
return on investment.
Yeah,
sort of thing.
And look. Is it a lie? I guess not, but you could say you could also be working out outdoors, or you could be working out in a different way, or maybe swimming is the best return on investment because it's actually cheaper and you might get better health. So I kind of get that, but I would say I would just flat out, I would probably stick to pay for the gym. It's best return on investment. Like, you know, I've seen it, and even if it isn't the case 100% of the time, I think I'd be happy to say that as like almost a governing truth if it at least gets people to exercise in some way, shape, or form. So I could say that off the top of my head. I think I would.
Yeah.
What's something that you reckon you would?
Look, I don't like lying, so in particular it would probably have to be like a lie of omission. It would probably have to be something where if you press me to the point, I'd go, look, I don't think that's actually true. And I held my tongue in this particular case because I think the person will have some benefits from doing
whatever
this thing.
It is. Yep.
You know, none particularly called them. I'm sure I do it, but none particularly really jump out at me as the greater good sort of thing. And this was essentially the argument I was making with my brother, which was, okay, all of those people who you're saying you're kind of, you know, forcing now to go to the gym.
Yep.
And he didn't particularly say how it was going to be enforced or whatnot. I think he only said, you know, three times 30 minutes a week, something like that. And I was still just saying, okay, but what about this individual who is compensating from a devastating breakup with this girlfriend, and it was because she accused him of being too skinny. So now he's sort of got an eating disorder because it's related to that. Is this going to help him? What about the professional linebacker in the NRL or is linebacker a thing in NRL? Okay, NFL. And a forward in NRL. Is that a thing?
No. Actually, it is.
Okay, good.
You would call them forward.
You would maybe look at their bodies and say, they're a little bit fat. Maybe they're not, they've maybe got a bit too much body fat on them. Yet, that is what they need for their profession sort of thing. So, in general, for the greater good, I really dislike that.
But wasn't Prentice's view of this, your brother's view, was that at a minimum should be 3 by 30-minute sessions, or he was like should be mandatory 3 by 30, like that's it?
I think he was saying it would be better for everyone if it was kind of enforced in a way.
Yeah, like a minimum enforcement of that.
Yeah,
okay.
I don't know what the difference between minimum or at least or
well, if it was like enforced 3 by 30. Well, if you're a rugby player, you want to train more than that. I want to train more than that.
No,
if you're
so it's
only
like,
that,
minimum and above.
Oh,
yes.
100%. Dude, me immortalized out there, I'm telling you, it's minimum, that's what you're going to be doing. If you're not doing that, disappointed in you.
This is, if you ever come to Wantopia, this is the...
You don't agree with that too, man. You work out more than me.
I don't think it should be enforced. No way.
Oh, no. But I mean, like, from an hour perspective, like, you train... I think if someone was, like, to follow your life or my life, you'd actually find that you'd be training more with current.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think people wouldn't realize that. But I think
people don't want to be me, man. I haven't met anyone who's been like,
maybe someone who wants to really do handstands. If they really want to like get really good at handstands in a quick burst of time, I think they'd be like, okay, well that's what I've got to do.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. Look, I guess the point I'm trying to make is the enforcement of it. If you want to, do I think in general it's good for people to exercise that much? Hell yeah, but it's that crossing the boundary point of of that sort of enforcement idea that it's good for everyone, and then it's for the greater good.
Yeah, so it's
good for everyone and for the greater good, even if you have some people who shouldn't be in the gym doing that three times 30 minutes a week, because there are some people who shouldn't be doing that because it's only going to have bad results for them. For the greater good, it's still better. But I dislike that idea so intensely.
Well, I think this is interesting. So it isn't good for everyone, but it is for the greater good. Like, it isn't good for everyone, and it's for the greater good. Again, that's a perspective point of view, though, in the same sense that if someone said, hey, we need to kill somebody, and so if we kill that one person, it saves from World War III, but they have to kill your family, you might be like, I don't see the benefit here. Like, this is, you're very close to heart. Maybe, rationality, you may be able to step back and be like, okay, I kind of see where this is reasonable, but you're never going to agree with it. You're too close to it in an emotional sense, and humans are emotional. From a, looking at it from a rational view, if it was just some random person's family you don't know about, you'd be like, oh, well, yes, we should do that. That makes logical sense. Why not?
Yeah.
So
it's getting to that point where we're sort of making in the hypotheticals where...
Well, it's a question of, and I think it's the specific, the greater good is very specifically determined by the vantage or the point of view that you're looking at it. If you're looking at the greater good from a government-wide lens, then absolutely, it's probably better to do mandatory, because the percentage of, were you explaining, like the ones who might have mental health issues because of it or whatever else? Because I support that if you have probably a lot of issues, it is going to help you out in a lot of ways. For a lot of people, it won't. But I think the percentage is quite low in comparison to how many actually would benefit. So the greater good does apply. But if your vantage point is very localized, it's very immediate, that it's going to be an issue for you or your family or for whatever purpose. Imagine if they do mandatory 3x30 and all your family members are like immunocompromised and everyone gets COVID and dies. Well, okay, for you, you're like, this is not helping, this is not good for the greater good. But again, your lens of view is different. If you somehow could view it as the government or a country, I think you'd look at it differently. Well, but I struggle, and this definition of the greater good, I think I also struggle to use that as a good perspective for debate over it. I think if you're utilizing, but it's for the greater good, it's too much wiggle room. It's like, for who? For who? Who are you talking about?
My problem is the sort of like we were mentioning in the hypotheticals. There's hypotheticals you can have which have no basis in reality, and this is the greater good one.
But no, it isn't. I think it's based in reality. I think this just applies as communism. Right? Like a communism...
Yeah, and
it didn't work out
really well.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, this is what I mean. There's no basis in reality. That you can't say for the greater good and then have a practical example of it. So it's kind of like saying,
an example where it works?
Wouldn't it be awesome if everyone had $1 million in the world? And I'd say, yes, sure, of course. Is anyone going to disagree with that? But how you actually enforce everyone to have $1 million in the world, how you actually make that happen, is you're going to just make society and the world a worse place trying to do that.
Well, you got to devalue money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. But specifically, though, I think I was saying a hypothetical. I was saying that it's a realistic thing where people have applied the use of good for the better, for the wider community, good for the nation, for the state, for et cetera, and not worked out well. Like, not worked out well at all for the people. And some people will view it and be like, oh, things are going great. And then you got all these people dying, and
the only case I can really think of that I know from, and I still actually do need to do more research on this, is the famous Singaporean president who sort of enacted all these ultra tough rules related to chewing gum and you get lashes, and it applied even to Americans and things like that. I think there was famous American case.
I can't remember what year it was, but they reduced the amount of lashes that he was going to get.
Yes, correct. And
that was on Balaji with Tim Ferriss. I think I was talking about that.
Yeah. And so in this case, that's maybe the ones where I would kind of agree. Okay, for the greater good, you're gonna have to do some totalitarian type shit. It's gonna be excessive, super excessive. Maybe that's one where you can sort of say an example of, oh, look, this is how it is.
I think I think there is a ton of actual real world examples where you can say where things are the greater good that work well, and there's examples where it doesn't work well. I just don't think that utilizing it as a debate perspective of, hey, should you enforce like minimum of 3x30 minutes? I don't think you can debate it well to say, well, it's good for it's good for the majority, it's good for whatever, because it just depends so much on the perspective. So you could take any perspective and win or lose the argument.
Yeah,
type
for
of
sure.
deal.
Pretty much. So with all of that being said, the recommendation I have from this is it really is worth doing that, I think, with your family and loved ones, really making the effort. So it is an effort. We have to, plan it kind of. It's three of us. We've all got, 3 or 4 of us. We've all got sort of busy lives. We physically drive, 20-ish minutes away from our home to go to a new place. But in terms of learning more about my dad in particular, I mean, damn, so many insights I've gained over the last kind of 2 years we've really been doing this. And just seeing how much I'm like him. It's crazy how much, when I dig down, I'm so
you see
close
those similarities.
to him. There's some little differences. I'd say I'm maybe a bit more, I think I might have a bit more perseverance in a way, and I'll even bring this up in the next topic that I bring up, but perseverance for some sort of things, I think I might have a little bit more than him. So he tried going to the gym, but he never stuck with it. I stuck with it. So yeah, there's some things, but man, if you ever
Karen's sticking with it.
If you ever meet someone and you're like,
3 months.
damn, he seems really, you remind me of someone, like you remind me of like a young Kyron. It's probably my dad.
There you go. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be similarities with family members, but I agree. I think making the effort, especially I think of being in a separate location with family members or just other people that you care about, that is of interest and digging down like deep into different topics. It's, a couple of things. It's hard. You've got to make time, etc. But it is worth it. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, and you also have to have that spirit of love as well, because it was it was a little bit confrontational, the spicy chat, but at the end of it was like, hugs all around. Thanks for making the time. This was really fun. I love you guys.
It's a good platform to do those hard conversations.
Yeah, even like away from the home in a way.
Well, yes, that's a good point. But I think it's also almost, if you're going to have really hard conversations with, say, relationships or other friends or work colleagues or whoever you meet in life, what better place to have those hard conversations with people who will love you almost no matter what, and have those discussions, because at the end of the day it's going to be okay. You can kind of come out of it and be like, okay, cool, we're fine, we're family.
Yeah.
Where you might approach that really terribly with somebody else, and then they're going to be like, I'm never talking to this dude again, and you're like, oh man, I've just destroyed that relationship. So before we get off the topic of workouts though, or at least the minimum of 3 by 30 minutes, I was going to add that perhaps they should be mandating a minimum of 3 pull-up sessions per week or some shit like that, because I've got to tell you, the Immortalites, my pull-ups have gotten so shit over the last couple of years. And I think we had a challenge 2 years ago, I think it was, where it was I was trying
3 years.
3 years ago, where I was trying to personally do the max amount of pull-ups I could do in 3 minutes, and I think that might have been the challenge.
No.
What was the actual challenge on pull-ups?
Sorry, there was one challenge, which was max pull-ups in 3 minutes. There was another challenge, was the quickest time to do 250 pull-ups.
But I don't think that was... Yes. So those 2 challenges. One of them was our annual goals challenge. The other one was just like a fun challenge that we set ourselves. That wasn't part of...
Oh, okay. Yep. Sorry, you're talking about that one. Yeah,
so that was like 3 minutes.
In 2019.
In any case, there was a lot of pull-ups that I was doing across those years. It started getting less and less, I think, since I started CrossFitting, just because it's not as part of my all-the-time workouts.
Because they don't do pull-ups there.
Yeah,
I don't know what they are.
I'm not even talking about keeping pull-ups. I'm just not doing pull-ups as much, flat out. There'd be maybe a week or 2 weeks where I just haven't done any pull-ups at all, unless I'm doing my own back workout and I'll go and do a pull-up. But what I found is, at the moment, it'd probably be 6 to 8 max on one set, where before, 18 and 20 would have been okay, that was a good, really hard push, but I got to the 18, 20, and then I'll do, I remember when I was doing the 3-minute one, I was able to do 18 to 20, then another 10, and then I'd be going down in 3, sets of 3. Now it's 6, 8, and already I'm kind of fatigued by the particular movement. I also noticed this in not working out shoulders for such a long time. I did a rowing type workout where essentially I probably ended up rowing 3.5 kilometers in amongst this time, and my shoulders were ridiculously sore, my rear delt, for days and days and days. And I went, oh man. But specifically it reminded me of, man, my pull-ups, I've gone so ridiculously shit. So maybe mandated pull-ups should be enforceable by law, by governments everywhere. They should do a minimum of 100 pull-ups daily
Dang, man.
So
that's a lot.
Going.
I did a full workout today, and I'm not sure
minimum 100 pull-ups.
I'm not sure I did 100. I've been
weak
around about that, but
so when we say that Karen actually works out, we actually mean that he's weak as piss when he doesn't do 100 pull-ups.
At least I can do I was doing sets of 22.
That is true,
20,
sets of 22.
So.
What are you trying to work up to, 40?
I want to do 40 in one go.
40 in one go.
And so for World Pull-Up Day, I believe is mid-September, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And this guy I was talking to last year, Chris from the park, he mentioned he got 39. And I was like...
+1.
I'm going to try and get 40. So we'll see how we go, man. It's so hard. Depends on like total strict form. Completely locking out the arm, I'm not going to be able to get that much. I'd be surprised if I can get 30.
Yep.
But if I can get to that point where there's still a bit of tension, I'm not... It's sort of like if you're doing bench press, do you count it as a rep if you don't fully, completely lock out the arm? As in, if the weight, if an extra 100 kilos or 500 kilos was put on, your arm would just sort of disintegrate? Or it would, you've got that tiny little bit of tension where the muscle is still sort of engaged, and if 500 kilos was put on, you would just fold in the natural bench press movement. Is that considered a rep? I don't know.
Well, if you're doing competition, no, it's not considered a rep. If you're just working out and training, sure, consider a rep. I mean, I consider it less of a rep if you're not going all the way down. If you're going, if you're not touching your chest, that's not a rep. That's not a rep.
What do you mean? Oh, sorry, on a bench.
Yeah, if you're benching and you're not touching your chest, then it's not really a rep. But if you're repping it back up, not to full extension, to full elbow lockout, and you're doing reps of it, that's fine. It's still the same tension. You're going through. I mean, if you can get it back to that point... It's kind of
dangerous doing that
if you get it to that point and you're locking out, that's actually the easy bit. In fact, here's an example of exactly this. I did a 155 kilo bench in a workout just at the CrossFit gym the other day, and it was 80%, 85% of my max, maybe even 90%. And I went down, kind of paused a little bit on the chest, lifted it up, and actually got to the point of 85% lockout. And so, under that tense, would you call that a rep? Some people might say if it's professional, full powerlifting, it might not be. So you have to fully lock it out. Now, I literally held that 155 kilos at that 85% lockout for 3 seconds, and then I fully locked it out, just power locked it at super speed, and put it away. So that bit.
Why'd you do that?
Well, because I wanted to feel it at that holding tension level, because when you're doing really hard bench, and this goes to most of the training you want to do, when you're holding barbells, you want to try and make it feel like you're trying to bend it, essentially. And what that bending does, it actually contracts your back and all your back muscles into a stiffer mode. So especially with benching, squatting, deadlifting, if you try to feel like you're bending the bar, it'll actually activate a lot of your lats and back muscles through it. So when I was holding it there, I was trying to pull it as hard as possible onto my back, so it felt like that super contraction was still there. In essence, I could have done a second rep. Well, what I was exactly trying to practice there is that if I was to go for a second rep, at the top, I was already heavily contracting the back muscles to then just be able to lower it and go back up sort of again. So that was just holding it there. But that little push extra from 85% lockout to 100% lockout, dude, I could have had 200 kilos on there and it would have mattered. It would have locked it out incredibly easy. So to me, I'd be like, well, if you want to do the full rep, well, fucking do it. But to be honest, I don't think it's doing much to your... If you're actually training it for sets, for reps, then nah. But if you're doing a professional, for powerlifting comp or something, sure, yes, you need to do it absolutely fully. So maybe in the pull-ups, maybe that extra little bit of dangling yourself all the way down and doing the pull-up, is it that much better for hypertrophy or for a lot of other things? Probably not for the percentage, but if you're doing it in the competition, then okay, that's what it is. So that's a standard. Yeah.
It's just getting back to the topic of losing something. I'm finding that I don't think I ever want to train where I'm trying to maintain / slightly improve tons of things. So I think I'm more enjoying getting really good at one particular thing and then it having some carryover onto stuff I've never done before. So for example,
would you say because have you felt it in the opposite way, you just didn't enjoy it as much?
Yeah, I find it's...
is it a lack of enjoyment or is more enjoyment? Which one is it that's pulling?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think it's more frustrating, so it's a bad thing doing it that way because I'm just not... If you do pull-ups once a week, you're not going to see noticeable gains even over I would say a 2-month period. That's just not enough to see. Maybe over a year you could go, oh wow, I've improved on that, and I've also improved on my handstands, and I've also improved on my running times, and I've because you'd be doing 7 different things, at least if you're training as much as I do. I don't like that. I sort of like I think it fits in also with my mentality of just stuff happening in a kind of surprised, unexpected way. It's like, oh, I'm way better than I thought I was. Yep. So about 4 months ago, I tried a V-sit for the first time, and I could do it. And I'd never trained a V-sit before. So for those who wonder, it's an L-sit is where your hands are on the ground by your hips, you press up and your legs are out in front of you, so it looks like you're forming an L with your body. A V-sit's the same thing, except you're turning a bit more and your legs are coming up closer to your face. Yep. So that was kind of fun. It was like, whoa, there's actually a hard move, and I can somehow just do it.
Yep.
But I only sort of got that because I focused on other things, which include a lot of core, and so I built up a strong core, and then, I just didn't need that much technique for that one. So, yeah, I don't know. How important are pull-ups to you? Are they worth chucking back in, or would it be worth focusing on something you enjoy more? Because you could also say your dips have probably been neglected a little bit. Maybe your swimming is. What's your sort of mindset? Do you want to do a bit of everything, or do you want to get really good at one?
That's what I was going to say. Mine was the opposite to yours, and I think it's going to show even more in my next annual goals. But I tend towards I like the enjoyment of doing it, like absolutely everything.
Yeah. And
seeing like little incremental gain, but across absolutely everything, as opposed to just one specific thing where that is what I'll dedicate. And some of it I have enjoyed, so mine's not a lack of enjoyment, because when I've focused specifically the last year of getting my bench to get over 2 times body weight and to get the clean and jerk over 1.5, that I enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed like specializing and losing a few other things, but I think I enjoy more when I'm focusing on everything, when there's a little bit of everything thrown into the mix, and either a lot of it is being stable or slightly improving. I'm like, yep, I really actually enjoy that more. So I'm probably going to be focusing and moving a lot of my training back towards that. And I think it's also paired up with realizing there's a lot of things in my life now in training that I'm not that I've ever expected it, but more so I'm more conscious that I'm not training in the way to be world level, world class at a bench or a deadlift or a squat or CrossFit or anything like that, because there's a certain level of dedication and amount of effort that you have to put that I've completely realized it's not what I'm prepared to be putting into my effort. There's a lot of other things in my life, and I think this extends broadly in.
Would you have said there was a period where you thought that would be something you'd do?
There was periods of my life where I would have said powerlifting, not that I would want it to be world class, but that I wanted to specialize more to do it more, like doing a powerlifting competition or something along those lines. But never in the mindset of, I want to be world-class at this particular sport or lift or movement. Not so much. It's never been like a driving factor. I would have said if it was more than anything, it would have been always the terminology of money and freedom. That's probably the governing thing, as opposed to anything sport-related or the like. So even more now, I'm like, actually, I want to be broad and learning about NFTs. And now I'm going to get into a bit of a streak of, actually, family have bought me all of Ryan Holiday's books for my birthday coming up. So I wanted to get more into, say, Greek learnings, but I didn't want to go back and read like meditations and a lot of those. So I want to just read those. So there's a lot of things I'm like, I really want to focus on in a very broad way. So in a similar sense with fitness, I go, okay, if I really had to think about it, am I going to enjoy 3 hours a day of specific bench practice and chest movements and getting my tendons stronger? Or am I going to have more enjoyment doing a 1 hour training session, 1 hour something else, 1 hour something else, and just kind of mixing and matching, and maybe a swim and maybe a run? I'm going to enjoy that more. So I think that's probably where I stand in the philosophy of doing things, as opposed to the enjoyment of one particular thing over a prolonged period of time.
Yeah.
So that'd be mine.
It's funny. I never had any desire to specialize in anything, and never any special desire to become the best at anything or get to that upper echelon level. Yet just, I don't know what it has been over this last year. Probably pretty much just since I've seen Miguel in front of me live in person, which is really weird because I've been to a Cirque du Soleil show before and I've seen one-arm people do a full show of the crazy shit that he was doing and an even more aesthetic format and things like that. But it was, I think there was something about that moment where I just went, I just want to do that. And I'm willing to sacrifice a lot to get that.
Yep.
Which is, it's kind of funny. It's weird. I don't know why that's popped up, but it has popped up.
But it has.
Now I shall follow it. I shall follow the journey.
Yeah.
So the other note that I had here was kind of related to what I was talking about before. Well, you'll see how it's related. And so my question to you is, if you could take anyone from history and plop them in the year we were born, so this is 1992, so internet's sort of just kicking up. I believe the Berlin Wall fell in that year, maybe the year before, something like that. If you could take anyone, who would you put in being born in 1992?
Look, to be honest, I'm actually sure. Hey, maybe notable people of the day that even just a couple of years ago would have, like, people who are prominent now, who maybe it'd been fun to see, people like Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, perhaps. Other people, I guess, who have done a lot of things. It would have been cool to see what they would have been like in a more modern age, I guess. The only other one that calls to mind is, why am I forgetting his name? Bloody Tesla. I don't know. Who would it be for you?
Actually,
and how is that relevant to the question before?
Well, I would actually say I'd really want to see what my dad would do, because this would be funny to see if... Well, not funny, more
Nikolai
just...
Tesla. That's what I was thinking. Sorry. Nikolai Tesla.
You said his fucking name, man.
Yeah, so I said Tesla, and I was like, what was his first name? I'm like, Nikolai Tesla.
You should have just said who was the actual guy, and I would have been able to help you.
No, Nikolai Tesla.
And
yes, I was correct. The fall of the Berlin Wall was 1989.
1989.
Yep.
Okay, there you go. What I would find fascinating of my dad in this era would be what he would make of the opportunities that weren't particularly afforded to him in some certain ways. So he did have that entrepreneurial mindset, but doing that without the internet, man, that's gotcha. A lot harder. You have to be willing to risk a lot of
is this coming as in, like, it would be personally interesting, or you think it would be like interesting for the globe?
No, not interesting for the globe. Interesting for myself. So gotcha. I think that would be... I'd love to know how much different, because like I mentioned, we're very similar. If he'd grown up with the same sort of influences in a general scale, so not parents-wise, so same parents, but in a different sort of environment, how would he be different, and how would his life be different? Because
to himself, like what, like how he would be different
to
his own life.
For example, would he have gotten married when he was in his mid-20s, I believe, is when he got married, maybe late 20s, around that stage, and had me when he was...
Wait, so
35.
I'm confused. So why would this be interesting to you?
Because I would love to know, would he still have made the same life decisions? Like, how much did his environment really shape the way his life went? And how much of it was him making decisions based off of, the guiding principles in his life? So gotcha. If the internet was around, would he have been able to have more success with his entrepreneurial things, and so he wouldn't have had to have worked as a teacher for 3 decades, 4 decades, 3 decades, which he didn't particularly enjoy doing. How would that have changed? How would have been a more looser environment in terms of sexual morals, for example? How would that have changed his decision to find a partner relatively young in life, or at least it seems now, those
so
sort
do you
of
think
things.
his life would have been, given the fact that you said there's a lot of similarities that you see, do you think that there would be a lot of similarities to the way that you have lived your life that he would live?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, well, this is the thing. I would imagine there'd be a sort of blend. I think it'd be kind of, if you took a snapshot of him at 30, you look at me right now, I have a feeling he'd been kind of more closer to me in terms of those two lives. But I don't know. So that's why I'd do that hypothetical if I could. But yeah, in terms of, I don't know, for the world, yeah, I don't know, a genius like Newton, what could he have done if he had the entire world's resources? You know, maybe he wouldn't.
I was just about to say, he might not have.
Yeah, maybe it wouldn't have been helpful for him. Like he had some great insights.
Well, it's a lot of things,
the limited
like,
knowledge of his
there's
age.
Leonardo da Vinci, there's like Copernicus, there's Newton. You know, there could be people like Einstein. A lot of the familiar things that they have.
And they're all like just random shit cunts who if you put them in this day and age,
they're just going to spring it. Well, the big thing about some of these, like, a lot of them had theories and thoughts that were opposing to the view of the day, which then turned out to be at least right, or people followed that particular theory, and that's what made them famous. Sometimes during the time, they weren't. Like Vincent van Gogh. Dude, no one gave a shit about him when he was alive. When he was dead, paintings were worth a fortune. Now, in a similar sense, could you, if you pulled out people from a particular era, they might have been gifted or advanced or whatever you have on that particular time frame, but brought them here, maybe it would be just so dissimilar that you can't, well, at least the hypothetical is too much of an extent to say how they would have reacted, because, you know, perhaps there's already humans like that or either don't have the right means or the right position or insert whatever, that you wouldn't be able to replicate the success they had in a current worldview. Maybe. Like, you know, if you brought Newton, is going to be more popular than the most famous TikTokers around? Perhaps not, you know, because there's already like really famous and genius people in science, you know. Does anyone know their names? Not really. I don't even know their names, dude. Do you know like who the latest people getting the Nobel Prize and stuff like that? Mathematics. You know, if you say who's the most famous mathematician, maybe a handful that I would know from podcasts. Apart from that, no one knows them. So they might be doing amazing things that we don't know, and we'll have to look back in, 80 years and go like, oh, damn, they did all these things when I was alive? Dude, none of us have any idea. Maybe there's a little bit of that, so uncertain. But yeah, look, to be honest, I'd just say like Nikola Tesla or someone else who's done a lot of like crazy thinking, because it would be fun to see what they would do in the current age.
Another fun one would be Jesus, just to know if he looked at Christianity and just went, nah, I don't like this. You know, it's something like he wouldn't know he created it, but just go, nah, this isn't for me.
Not what I thought.
Nah, I'm not digging it. That would be pretty funny.
He just changed it to like, just follow another religion or be like a techno king or something like that. And be like, actually, I prefer technology. Like, we should just let AI take over or something.
Lol. What other notes do you have, man?
I have quite a few, but I'll pick maybe just the one that I pulled up before. So I have talked about that one, but oh my god, why did it move away? No, the actual one I wanted to talk about was a NFT meetup that I went to recently. And he
stooged one of his good friends. Oh my lord.
Yeah, Manshul, mate. Yeah, I didn't invite you.
And his brother.
And his brother's friend. But that's what you get for not being part of the Twitter or having Discord on there. So, in fact, the owners of WoW don't know that they own WoW. So there you go, Manshul and your brother. Yeah, should probably get known by the owners. So
World of Women is the NFT.
World of Women is the NFT. But in any case, we caught up and it was just an interesting conversation. There was a conversation with a couple of people that I've known now for a year, which was great fun. It was great catching up with them. There were separate conversations around, the future of Web3, conversations in the Brisbane and Australia space, projects, etc., which I always love. But it also gave me the insight to have conversations with two other people who, one was very new into cryptocurrencies in general. The other one lived in Dubai for most of her life and had quite a good grasp on Web3 and a lot of work that's being done in the space. And telling them about my story of sharing and getting someone into the whole NFT space and Web3 with a digital wallet, which is my sister. I also was asking the questions of, what are you finding interesting? What are the big challenges that you're finding? And I don't know, some more perspectives that in the end, my takeaway was, if I want to be talking to people about Web3, if I want to be trying to share, I have to pull things back into more philosophy or more of the core foundations and forgetting things that I even find should be like things that I should teach or like share, because it just almost doesn't matter to share them or talk about them. to the
So
base philosophy.
what do you mean by that? Give me an example.
So example was CNFTs and Cardano in general. So these individuals, one individual in particular, obviously had bought Ethereum NFTs, but when I started kind of sharing to them, they had no idea what Hosky's what, and I explained them to Hosky, and they were like, "Your mate's crazy." Like they could not understand you. So the understanding of what Cardano wasn't there at all. So for me to try to explain the difference between CNFTs and NFTs, I had to step back to just Cardano in general. And this was someone who had been trying to learn about crypto for last year. So I was like, okay.
Yeah, makes sense.
Which is fine, but gives me the understanding.
50 different things to concentrate on.
So, but because there is so many, and we got into this point, there's just so many things that you can't possibly know at all. So again, when you're trying to onboard or get people to know things, I was giving them the example of us and the fact that we do Satoshi streaming and trying to get people to in the Valley for Valley channel. How do you get them into the space so that it's easy? Like, where do you start without it being super hand-holding? So I've done hand-holding where I've gotten people to learn things and jump into the space or a philosophy. How you might be able to teach people at a base philosophy level, or what base core things are important. Again, it gave me another insight of okay, I still have to think this a lot more. I think it
needs to be super hand-holding unless you're the one actually doing the coding and creating the killer app.
I guess the thing for me is it's not scalable. It's not super scalable. It's not super scalable. What's a more scalable way of teaching some of these things?
Yeah, well,
that doesn't dictate. What's the incentive? What's the incentive in the?
If you want scalable, man, you got to write code. I think isn't that the only real way to get scalability is to create something that is just so easy to use.
No. So I think you're missing the point there though. From you could make Bitcoin or the utilization of any technology the easiest thing possible, but one thing is knowing about it. The other one is that you actually sign up to the philosophy of it.
I think that's a losing battle, man. I'm not sure you're going to win that battle.
No, so I guess the example I'm trying to put here is, say, Uber Eats. If someone has a core philosophy that they hate delivery of food to their house, well, Uber Eats still exists and it's a usable product, but because the philosophy of theirs doesn't match up, then they're not going to use it, right?
Is that, man? Is that I'm not sure I get that analogy because how many people are like that?
Maybe the conversation is you trying to convince your dad to use cryptocurrencies, but you haven't been able to convince him. He's like, no. Do you think if it was easier to onboard him, he would sign up?
In a way, yes. In a way.
So do you reckon his reasoning for not utilizing cryptocurrency is because it's too difficult to use?
That's not the main one, no. Okay. But if I literally put something in front of his face and said, do this thing, I'm sure he'd do it. So it's not... it's just... the philosophy part, that's where I'm sort of going... I don't think people care, to be honest. You know, I'm sure there's so much about politics that is philosophical, and I just don't give a fuck. And I'm not. Hopefully, I hope there's a promise to future Kyron. I hope you don't give a fuck, future Kyron. But we'll see what. But again, I do know I am an idiot.
That seems interesting to me because I guess in the past when you've shared it about your dad, it does seem like you have tried to explain to him some of the philosophy around Bitcoin and the standard and everything else. And for him, he still sees it a bit as a Ponzi scheme and a few other things.
Sure. Yeah, so
I don't know if better code, like you said, better code is going to fix that.
I think better code is I think better code has a better chance of fixing that than a philosophical debate. I don't think I've had the philosophical debate, and I wouldn't say I was trying to convince him. I was just saying this is what I find interesting. That there's a big blocking point there, as a stumbling point. I'm not sure that's going to be surmounted, and so it's more if the Suncorp app that he's using screws up, and I'm like, oh, by the way, check out this lightning.
I think the reason in like a high level view that reminds me of the thing of Simon Sinek, the whole there's the why that should be the principal thing, and the what can come later. I think the way you're describing it sounds like you're putting the what first, and the why doesn't matter as much, because if the what's good enough, then the why doesn't matter.
Well, I think in a way, when you look at his circles, if you want to take this in another direction, the why is so small. So maybe you only need that little core group of people to know the why, and it's more the what for everyone else. So, I would just say if your project, I guess, the MW3, what do you call it? MW3, I feel like I'm missing something. I thought there was 4 characters. MW3?
Well, no, it's MMW3.
MMW3,
Yep.
Apologies. So with your MMW3, if you're going to focus on the philosophy stuff, I think that the answer is no, I'm not. I'm not going to focus on the philosophy. I think, so again, in that aspect of MMW3, I want to talk more about the foundational technology that underpins a lot of the work that, say, when you talk about NFTs or when you're talking about the utilization, like what is it actually is more of the point. Like what is Web3 in comparison to other things, besides any conversation that's related to price action or monkey NFT. Because the reality is when you're talking to an LGA or a Woolies or Coles, which are like, food brands here, like supermarkets here in Australia, when you're talking to them, if you say to them, hey, I can come and help you integrate with NFT, well, because the majority of the conversation is, well, monkeys and, doodles and, CryptoPunks, what the hell does that mean? And again, as a sales pitch, maybe you can sell some of those, but realistically, there's no value really. There's no value for the business, value for the system integrator. Whereas, and there's something I was talking about with Al, the other day around, well, if you can make the right claim of, hey, BMW, you spend $22.3 million on creating keys and card keys for people. How about you do a privatized key in a similar way that Tesla does it, with mobiles allowing you to access the car, but you can do you can do it much cheaper. Here is a $6 million solution, and you can roll it out operationally much easier. Oh, by the way, it's underpinned by blockchain and NFT technology, but it doesn't actually matter for you because in the end of the day, it's just another technology. So, yeah, well, that's sort of what I mean. I think if it's just you can make money, by the way, it's almost like you don't even really need that. So it's more
the why behind it.
Yeah, look, and this is just talking about scalability. I find the philosophy stuff
but there is an underpinning
Bitcoin.
Why there. There is an underpinning why there. The why is because the company wants to
make money,
right? So that's the underpinning value there. But again, to your dad, I don't think that the answer is that he's not changing to Bitcoin. Why? Because he's making more money elsewhere. Now, I would say that's a false premise, because if you want to look at the numbers, it'd be like, well, that's wrong. Like, you would be made way more money on cryptocurrency. And I don't think a lot of people would be like, well, that's not the reason. I think there's fear, unknown. And I agree. If it was way simpler to interact with, like shares, then hell yeah, I think more people would get into it because it would just be much more easily accessible. As we saw, from 2016 onwards or 2017 onwards with centralized exchanges. The ability of exchanges of bringing people into the space probably has been more positive than negative on the whole space as a whole, right? Because there was a conversation me and Hannah on a podcast I was listening to where they were saying, centralized exchanges, yes, they can be a bad thing because people want to keep their coins on exchanges rather than probably the way that it was interacted, where you should hold your own,
Guilty.
your keys.
I did that for 2 years.
I'm still doing that, right? And you should hold your own tokens in your own keys, right? It's like I still hold like a portion of mine in there just because I don't care about the money that's in there. I'm like, oh, well, whatever, that's fine. Now, there is a point of play, and people are like, well, we shouldn't have done that. It should just be, your own keys. That's where you should hold your coins. Well, shut the fuck up. Like, how many people got brought in because of centralized exchanges? In fact, everyone probably listening to this right now, unless you're pre-2017, you probably bought coins from an centralized exchange, right? As your first purchase of cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever you want to call it. So, to be honest, I'd go, yes, there are benefits to that, and I think I get what your point now coming from the technology. If you do make it easier, then people are just going to absorb it into their intake and probably learn as they go. But maybe I'm thinking about it right now, right at this very second. What's going to help someone? I don't think I can influence anything to the technology, and perhaps maybe it's not going to be me for sure, but maybe someone out there can influence it by technology to make it easier to onboard people. Ultimately, what I came out with it was, at least in the here and now, right now, what's in front of me, living in the moment, I have to focus on some very foundational things. And I think you mentioned this last time. Just have to let them learn. Have to let them. It'd be like, if you want to now learn more about it, you have to go on your own path.
That's funny because I've had the opposite experience. The people who not that I've tried to again, but the people who I've had a successful interaction with of getting them to change a behavior or do something that they didn't do was, sending them the Fountain app and just like, here's a real easy way, bam, here's a couple of thousand Satoshis, bam. That I've done that more times than I have been able to, even people who like Pete from the Learn Cardano podcast. I was telling him about this Fountain stuff ages ago.
Yeah.
Well, not Fountain in particular, but this podcast and stuff ages ago. And yeah, he was intrigued by it, but he never took the step. Let's see what happens on Wednesday when I see him at the next meetup. But I think if I just go, hey, it's like prime time, get out your fucking phone, do these 3 steps, and your podcast can be, you can be earning sats. I've just found, maybe it's because I'm shit at explaining things, and it's much easier to be like, here, shiny app, use this thing, rather than getting real philosophical, which is a bad thing, because this is it's under the philosophical section in the podcasting places, and yet I seem to be really shit at it.
That is a good point.
So in that case, well, that's not a good thing. But yeah, I've had more success with better app technology. Use this thing.
I think I'm not gonna say the word denial, but I think what success means here is debatable. It's the what success entails there, because I still struggle to see someone like a good friend Joey onboarding him and utilization of the Satoshis that's been sent to him. That's one thing, absolutely. And if success looks like that, then that's been successful. But then if you take a more prolonged look, and again, it all depends on what you deem success, but if success here means that he is now interacting in the crypto space and in Web3 in general, I don't know how much that's going to enable him to do this. I don't know. I would hazard a more than 50% chance that he doesn't purchase more Bitcoin because of this. That he'll utilize the Satoshis that are existing, that he's been sharing, and not go the next step of purchasing some more to continue to do that. Now, that's not based on any fact, folks. And Joey, you might correct me if I'm wrong here, so please do this.
Please send a booster.
Right? Please send a boostergram of you purchasing more. And in fact, I'm doing this so like maybe it'll incite you. But I think if success looks like that,
it's just fuck you Juan as a booster.
Do it. Like send it. Buy some new Bitcoin and send that through. Because if you do, okay, you prove the point that did help. But if you don't, and if people who get onboarded that way don't, then is that real success? Because I have the same problem with onboarding my sister. I talked her through the whole entire thing. She has an NFT. She has a smart wallet. She's not going to continue to utilize the space. There's nothing there for value for her beyond what I've just given her. I've taught her information. But success, I guess, for me was getting her really into the space and understanding what it means ultimately into the many, many years in front in terms of what other companies might do, and just knowing what's it like in a similar way than when digital banking was beginning. If you were right at the beginning, it might have been good to get your parents who might have a struggle in doing that trend, that changeover from normal banking to digital banking. So if my mentality is, well, we're going to be moving into a space where we have more decentralized wallets, it's good to get people who might have that struggle to start learning about it now so that they can transition with the world that comes. And I didn't see that either. I didn't see that with my sister, and I spent a lot of time, and I've talked to her follow-up. There's just no value there for her to go ahead and continue to do that. And I guess that's a struggle I think I'm going to play with a few other things with the Web3, where it's like, okay, I want to try and present something where it's me learning about it and understanding some of the core concepts and ideas behind it, but I want to try and remove it, or at least put some value, so that if someone's listening to it, they're like, okay, I can kind of see how that's going to apply in my real world day to day. So, anyways, it's a long rant, but Joey, please send this message, because I, in my eyes, my debate would be, I think the people who you've onboarded, it won't be a success if they don't continue to utilize the platform. And then it'll be like, okay, well, you might as well just send that to a random person, just send it back to you.
It's true. Then I would also just say, okay, but any of the philosophy stuff they've had access to over the past 2 years of listening to this podcast has had zero effect.
Well, exactly.
I'm not sure he's ever brought up.
No, but that's what I'm saying. I'd put that the onus on me in terms of some of these conversations.
It's all Juan's fault. All the world's problems are because Juan's shit. Exactly.
The ability to translate what is the value behind it that might be valuable to you. Again, I mean, I'm not going to say it's just me. I reckon there's a large majority of the reasoning behind whether it's a Bitcoin maxi, whether it's someone in cryptocurrency. don't even get rid of cryptocurrency. Anything in general, if there's no value for the other party, unless you force them to do so, mandatory. Going back to your brother in 3 by 30 minutes, there's value for me of going to the gym. You don't have to ask me. Like, I'm going to go, and there's value because I started going to it from training. I do it for now. There's a lot of value that I see in it. You don't have to ask me twice. I'm going to do it. Someone who hasn't, and it still could be just as valuable, you're going to have a real struggle to get them through. You could teach them the philosophy aspect of why training. You could force them, right, by giving it, you have to go do this. Ultimately, what I see in that picture is like, I think maybe if you teach them why, they'll actually go and do it, as opposed to making like the workout 5 minutes and they just have to get on a, wobbling like board and whatever. Some people are just not going to do that. Any case, I think it's a difficult topic of success and debate of crypto and not just other things in general, that you just have to be wary what you're trying to get people to do.
Yeah, look, and my view has come from my own personal experience as well, which was I bought Bitcoin back in 2018, 2017. Thankfully, not at 20K, but a little bit cheaper than that. Held on to it for ages, was doing that sideways movement, but nothing philosophical-wise intrigued me about it then. It wasn't until, actually some things did, but it was the use case. I couldn't use it to fucking get rid of these travel expenses I was incurring going from Mexico to Guatemala to Peru, Peru to Colombia. Like, I was still having to pay these fucking stupid charges and shit like that. Yeah. And I hated it. But it wasn't until, I sent a boostergram through to Adam Curry and Dave Jones from Podcasting 2.0. They read out the message, and that was just light bulb. Yep. Holy fuck, okay. Now I can get into it. So yeah, for me it was tech first, awesome tech stuff, and then the underpinnings behind it, rather than vice versa. So yeah, that's why I'm arguing more the opposite side.
Yeah, I mean, my last thought on that then would be, if let's just say this amazing technology then comes through next year, which is not cryptocurrency at all, nothing to do with cryptocurrency. Let's just call it, I don't know, quantonomics or some crazy thing about quantum
enhanced
computers.
Vision.
And
I can now see like extra colors on the spectrum.
Something like that. Something like that. Something amazing, easy to get into technology wise. Do you see yourself pivoting to that and being like, okay, well now this is easy. That's a thing like I can see as the future of like humanity. That's what I'm going to do.
I think it's the doorway. It will at least get me intrigued by it.
Gotcha.
Philosophy is fucking boring on its own. I'm not.
I agree.
I don't give a shit about what Kant thinks about whatever. But if there was, a use case for it, or maybe a really cool, sort of maybe like the Einstein sort of things, I'd probably general relativity, special relativity. I wouldn't even know those words, but it had an amazing use case. I.e., now we can use GPS. That sort of stuff.
Well, so, and I'll also point...
For me, it's the that initial touch point that drags you in. I need to have something cool to play with, something physical, rather than just a pure hypothetical.
Well, and I would say that in all this context that I've been saying, I apply, and if you immortalize have listened to us for a while, the effective philosophy principle, not just random philosophy. So when I'm talking about how to describe it to somebody, being, I guess, aware enough and learned enough and understanding like the context of where people come. So if I'm explaining cryptocurrency in general, I might actually talk about it in inflationary and deflationary model as opposed to anything else, because that might be actually the piece they care about, like that's valuable for someone. So maybe someone in Argentina, as we've said, or other places, if you explain it in inflationary and deflationary, man, they might care a lot more about that than if you say to them it's about the fact that they will enable this or do that. Right. Yeah. They don't give a shit about that. They'll be like, no, I just want my money that I don't have to spend it right now.
Yeah.
AKA,
like
what Venezuela went through, or what Argentina went through when you went away and you were like, I think you were saying like your girlfriend at the time had to buy things and basically be like, well, we have to spend the money because it's not going to be worth that. Like down the track.
That's what happened.
So, anyways.
Very good.
That's plenty on for the meanderings today.
Well, that's a good meanderings, man. Lots of tasty, juicy stuff. Almost getting to an hour. It's pretty rare. We don't usually go that long. So, we'll finish it up here. Look, there's a value for value podcast, so you can follow either of our two methods. You can follow the philosophy of it. So if you want to follow the philosophy, check out the Value for Value podcast that I run, and you can understand more of that. If you want more the touch point of the cool tech, I would say try checking out the Fountain app. And sending
both.
some Satoshis. You don't even need to upload them yourself, and this is where it's like terminology. Uploading Satoshis, buying Satoshis, getting Satoshis. How the fuck do you do that thing? Thankfully in the app, you know, you can just create a clip of the Mere Mortals, for example. Some people listen to it, they'll send you like some 10 sats or 20 sats, or if they spam it 100 sats, use that to then send it on elsewhere, or stack those sats yourself, you know, whatever you want to do. But we appreciate if you send it back through, because for the Value for Value podcast, we provide value. We've got an hour here of juicy, spicy conversations, and we then just ask that you send back what you feel you got out from it. So if you got out nothing, okay, that's fine. But I think you got out something more than that. You got some gym stuff. You got some.
I hope Joey sent through one Satoshi, being like, that's what your value is worth.
Yeah, you know what? That's good for a laugh as well.
That is true.
In the latest value, complete side topic here, but the latest value for value. I was reading out the Boostograms, and because I'm still not getting like 500, I think that was maybe 5 or something.
Yep.
Someone said in 4 Boostograms, and a 4 sat Boostogram, and it was 3 clap emojis.
Oh, yeah.
And then the next one was 5 sats, and I was like, fucking 20% increase. Yeah, let's go. There's funny stuff around.
All right, that's it. Immortalites, hope you enjoyed.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Juan, out.
Karen out.
Good.
Bitcoin.